Have you ever felt like your mind just won't shut off? Even when everything is quiet, there's a constant noise inside, as if your thoughts have a life of their own. Most people live in a repetitive mental cycle, where thought never stops and awareness stays in the background. And the most subtle part, they think that's normal. You are not what you think. You are the one who observes the thought. And until you understand this, you will keep being controlled by it. Krishnamurti was direct. The conditioned mind, the one that repeats, compares, judges, and reacts, is always trapped in time. It relives the past or projects the future. And in that movement, it loses the now. It loses reality. Breaking this cycle isn't about forcing the mind to stop. It's about something much deeper. Recognizing the space where the mind happens, but where you're no longer a prisoner of it. In this video, you'll understand why trying to control thought only feeds the cycle itself. You'll discover the power of conscious observation, without judgment. You'll experience what it means to step out of mental repetition and into a state of true clarity. This content is for those who have already tried to quiet the mind in many ways, meditation, affirmations, techniques, but still feel that something deeper needs to be reached. You'll realize there's another place within you, a silent, clear, and awakened place. And it's not in the future, it's here now. So if this topic speaks to you, stay until the end. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment below on what's holding you back right now. Your awareness is being called. Jiddu Krishnamurti was an independent spiritual thinker, recognized worldwide, who rejected all forms of authority, tradition, or organized religion. He dedicated his life to investigating the human mind, the nature of thought, and inner freedom. His main teaching was clear. True liberation begins when we understand how the mind works, not when we try to control it. And perhaps the most common and least noticed prison is this constant mental overactivity. We live in a state where overthinking has become normal. The mind is always busy, planning, remembering, analyzing, judging. And the more we think, the harder it becomes to realize that we're being carried, not by conscious choices, but by automatic impulses. This is the nature of the overactive mind. It keeps moving, not because you want it to, but because it's been conditioned to. Thought has become an automatic response to discomfort, boredom, or uncertainty. And when you get used to this endless activity, you lose touch with what lies beyond thought. Conscious silence. The mind turns into a system of reaction. It responds to everything all the time. But this constant reaction doesn't solve problems, it recycles them. Krishnamurti said that clarity is not possible when the mind is full. And that's the point. An overactive mind is not a productive mind. It's an exhausted, fragmented mind, trapped in its own loops. If you've tried to meditate, to be silent, to focus, and still found yourself falling back into the same pattern of inner noise, know this: it's not a lack of effort. It's a lack of understanding how thought works. The first step is not to try to stop the mind. It's to realize that you're trapped in it. No denial, no guilt, just awareness. Observing this imprisonment already begins to create a new space. A space where thought doesn't rule, it just happens. After years of running on autopilot, the mind develops a pattern. It doesn't think to solve, it thinks to survive. And in this process, it creates a closed loop. Thought generates an emotion, that emotion feeds back into the thought. And the cycle continues. That's why certain fears, guilt, self-criticism, and inner conflicts keep coming back, even when they've already been resolved rationally. Thought isn't interested in real solutions. It's interested in staying active. Krishnamurti warned, every thought is born from the past. And if we're constantly thinking, we're constantly reacting to what was, not to what is. In other words, we live trapped in memories, interpretations, and conditioning. The now becomes just a reflection of what's already recorded. This is how parasitic thinking works. It consumes your attention, drains your energy, and limits your perception without you noticing. You think you're thinking about something, but in reality, thought is just repeating and using you as a channel. This creates a very real sense of imprisonment. You try to change, try to act differently, but something keeps pulling you back. It's like being caught in an invisible net. That net is made of mental patterns reinforced over years, sometimes over generations. The more you try to escape thought with more thought, the more trapped you become. Because even the act of wanting to stop thinking is still a mental movement. The way out is not to fight thought. It's to see the pattern clearly with presence, not with effort. Krishnamurti called this seeing the false as false. And when you truly see it without justifying, denying, or trying to change, the pattern begins to lose its power. This is the transition from repetition to awareness, from being carried by thought to seeing it for what it really is. One of the hardest ideas to accept, especially for those who are already awakened and seeking inner growth, is that trying to control the mind may be exactly what keeps it active. Krishnamurti was clear. The mind that tries to control itself is the divided mind trying to fix itself. It seems logical to want to dominate your thoughts, to filter out the bad ones, keep the positive ones, repeat affirmations, monitor what's going on inside. But this attempt at control is, in reality, just more thought. It's more noise trying to fix the noise. Have you ever tried, for example, to stop thinking about something, only to think about it even more? That's not weakness. It's the mind trying to deal with itself, and that always leads to conflict. This illusion of control comes from the belief that it's possible to organize the mind through effort. But effort is resistance, and where there is resistance, there is conflict. This is the game that never ends. The thinking self trying to fix the self that overthinks. On the outside, it may look like spiritual practice. On the inside, it's just repetition disguised as self-control. Thought tries to purify itself, but it is the very source of fragmentation. Krishnamurti showed this clearly. The observer is the observed. In other words, the one trying to control the thought is still part of the same movement. So the way out is not to dominate thought, but to see it without the desire to interfere. In the midst of the inner confusion caused by constant thoughts, most people look for answers in doing techniques, methods, mantras, rituals. But Krishnamurti pointed to something much simpler and more radical: to observe. Not to observe like someone analyzing. Not to observe in order to fix or improve. To observe like someone who simply sees without interference, without judgment, without trying to change what is there. A direct contact with the reality of the now. In practice, this means the following. Instead of reacting to a thought or trying to replace it, you simply notice it. You see the thought arise and you don't move with it. You don't resist it, but you also don't follow it. You simply recognize a thought is happening. This attitude triggers a real neurological shift. Neuroscience studies show that when a thought is consciously observed without judgment, activity in the brain's default mode network, responsible for mental rumination, begins to decrease. It's as if the simple act of observing starts to shut down the repetitive circuit. And this is not a technique with steps. It's more of an inner posture, a willingness to be present with what is, without trying to control the flow. If you want to try it now, close your eyes for a few moments. Let any thought arise, and instead of reacting or evaluating, just observe how it appears and passes, like a cloud in the sky of your awareness. This kind of observation creates space, and where there is space, thought cannot dominate. Observing thought is the entry point, but awakening consciousness goes beyond that. It's recognizing that there is something in you that doesn't change, even when thoughts change. That something is the silent witness. It's the part of you that has never been conditioned. That is present right now as you read, and that was present even before any idea of who you are. When you start to observe thoughts more clearly, something curious happens. You realize there is a distance between the one who thinks and the one who notices the thinking. That distance is consciousness. Krishnamurti said this realization cannot be achieved through effort. It happens when the observer stops trying to interfere and simply remains aware. In that moment, you are no longer in the mind. You are in consciousness. And here's a simple yet powerful practice to activate that space. Close your eyes and ask internally, who is thinking this right now? And wait, don't rush to find an answer. Feel what happens in that pause. This is a key to interrupt the automatic dominance of thought and open a field of presence. The awakening of consciousness is not an extraordinary event. It's a shift in your inner position. You move away from identifying with the mental flow and anchor yourself in the silent point that has always been there, but that you had forgotten to notice. After observing and recognizing the silent witness, a new possibility arises. Breaking mental patterns, not through force, but through presence. For years, you may have fed certain thoughts without realizing it. Thoughts of self-criticism, fear, comparison, control. These patterns work like reinforced neural tracks, pathways where mental energy flows automatically. The common mistake is to think that breaking these patterns means fighting them. But fighting is still a reaction. It's still the old program trying to change itself with the same elements. What truly breaks a mental pattern is clarity. Not in the sense of intellectual understanding, but in the sense of seeing the pattern's movement as it happens and not moving with it. Presence means this: being aware in the exact moment the pattern shows up. Not rejecting, not resisting, just seeing. Seeing, for example, how a thought of scarcity appears every time you feel insecure, or how the mind immediately judges, even when you're simply trying to observe someone. This clarity begins to deprogram the cycle, because without identification, the pattern loses the energetic base that sustains it, your unconscious attention. Presence is what deactivates repetition. Not because you broke it by force, but because you stopped feeding the story. Breaking is not destroying. It's simply no longer repeating. This is the difference between someone living on autopilot and someone who is beginning to awaken. Many people believe that silencing the mind means eliminating thoughts completely. But that's not only impossible, it's unnecessary. Thought is a natural function of the mind. The problem isn't thinking. It's being thought without realizing it. Being thought means being completely identified with every idea, impulse, mental image, without any space of awareness between the stimulus and your reaction. It's living in reaction instead of in choice. Krishnamurti was clear. True silence is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of conflict with thought. It's when thought can arise, and you don't get lost in it. You observe. You let it pass. You don't cling to it, you don't resist it, you don't respond automatically. That state is lucid presence. And it brings direct consequences. Anxiety decreases because you're no longer feeding nonstop mental scenarios. Clarity increases because your energy is no longer being drained by unconscious loops. Your vibrational field stabilizes because your nervous system begins to operate at a different pace. Silencing the mind, then, is a consequence, not a goal. It's the natural result of no longer being carried away by everything that shows up inside you. This silence is alive. It's what allows you to hear something deeper than thought. Intuition, direct perception, the intelligence beyond linear logic. The mind is an extraordinary tool. It organizes, plans, analyzes, interprets. But when it takes the place of the master, chaos sets in. Because the mind was made to serve consciousness, not the other way around. In deep spirituality, this is a central point. You didn't come here to be ruled by the mind, but to awaken the one who is beyond it. It's that one who observes, feels, recognizes, intuits. That is your state of conscious presence. Krishnamurti reminds us that freedom is not an ideal to be achieved, but the clear perception of what imprisons. When the mind takes the center of your being, it creates an identity based on the past and projections. But when you recognize your true center, consciousness, the mind can return to its natural place. A useful instrument. To live spiritually is not to reject thought. It's to recognize that its value lies in the one who observes it, not in the one who blindly follows it. True spirituality begins when you start to dwell in consciousness and use the mind, and no longer dwell in the mind and lose consciousness. You can keep living the way you've always lived, thinking the way you've always thought. Or you can begin now to cultivate the space where thought happens but doesn't take control, where the mind becomes clear and consciousness becomes active. Krishnamurti didn't offer ready-made techniques. He offered vision, and vision transforms. Because when you truly see what's happening inside you, change doesn't need to be forced. It becomes inevitable. If this content spoke to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. What keeps you most trapped in your own thoughts today? Your journey to mental freedom begins with observation, but it is sustained by presence. And presence is your birthright.